Hello and welcome to episode 87 of the Juicebox Podcast. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by OmniPod, the world's only tubeless insulin pump. You can go to myomnipod.com/demo to try a free, no obligation demo pod today. This episode of the podcast is with Brad. Brad's the dad of Ella. Ella is a little girl who has just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and Brad is also divorced from Ella's mom. So this conversation is just invaluable if you're co-parenting from different households, or even if you're having trouble finding a way to talk to a significant other or a spouse about, the duties and responsibilities of helping another person live with type 1 diabetes. All right, settle in, get your headphones in your ears, get yourself ready. Here comes the Juicebox Podcast. In 3, 2, 1, 0, -1.
Brad, 38, getting ready to be 39. My daughter is 9, Ella, and 3 weeks ago she was complaining about some side pains, and we've noticed she was drinking a lot and thirsty a lot, and she'd lost 8 pounds in 2 weeks, and but we just had no clue what to, that this was a diabetes thing. So she went to the nurse, and then the nurse said, yeah, let's go have her checked out at the pediatrics, and they checked her blood sugar there, looking at different ideas, and checked her blood, and she was over 500. So they told us to go to a Riley Hospital, which is a children's hospital up here. And when we got up there, she was over 300, and her A1C was 12.1%.
How long did they give you a feeling for how long they thought her pancreas wasn't working?
No, they didn't have a good clue. So it just it flipped our world upside down, and had no clue. Nobody in my mom or on my side. My grandparents were type 2 later in life, and her the mom's side, she doesn't know anything about her dad's side. So the grandpa of Ella on her mom's side, we don't know anything about. So he was 100% Cherokee. We don't know if there's a native thing to it or not. But we just don't have any history on that part. So anyway, I've dove into the deep end and trying to learn everything I can, reading, learning, online, and then that's how I came across your podcast. And to be honest, I think it's probably one of the most helpful things is to hear other parents' conversations and stuff. And so that's been super helpful. I have a 1-hour commute each way to work, and so and then at work, I just sit and work on my computer and headphones in, listening. And so I've been listening to your podcast driving home or at work, and it's given me a lot of insight, and to know I'm not the only one freaking out in the beginning and stuff like that.
Well, that's really nice especially for all the people who come on and share their stories, which you are now a part of. So, so when you reached out, I have to admit, I was really interested in talking to you because I haven't heard from a ton of people who were like, my child was diagnosed in the last couple of weeks, and I'd like to talk about it. And that's just because it's such a raw thing. But so I really appreciate it because I think there's a lot of insight here probably to be had. So you said there's no diabetes history that you can find. How about, do you know about other endocrine issues? Anything? No. Nothing that you can point to. So, okay.
No, I mean, I've never even been to a hospital overnight myself in my life, and my wife neither, or ex-wife, I'm sorry, neither. But we're really dumbfounded about it, how it happened, and so we're just hitting it, head on, trying to. And that's been the hard thing is her numbers have been all over the scale, and I know the nurses are still trying to regulate it, and we've just got our numbers changed again, for lunch and breakfast and dinner is all different now, and stuff like that.
Yeah, Brian, the beginning is not fun. Okay, so, and there's an extra twist to your story because you're a divorced dad, so you're going to be the first person we talk to, and I've been interested in this for a while, but you're going to be the first person we talk to who's not either just single parent or co-parenting with a spouse.
Right.
So, all right. So, and to remind people, you're probably not even 3 weeks into this.
Yeah. Today is 3 weeks.
Today's 3 weeks. Okay. So,
and we meet our NP today, actually, in a few hours. We're going to go up to Indianapolis and meet our nurse practitioner for the first time.
Okay.
And we don't meet our endo until October.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just a little sarcastic. Trust me, I don't remember the last time I laid eyes on my endocrinologist, so you'll be okay.
Okay.
So what is the I mean, I guess I don't want to gild the lily too much, but what were your initial feelings when did you understand what diabetes type 1 even was when they told you she had it? Or?
Barely, and all I remembered was my grandparents and what they were dealing with in the end, but barely. That's what I'm saying. I dove in the deep end. I was at the hospital the 3 days there, and that's all I did was just looking online, trying to read everything. My mother is a teacher. She's a writer, an editor. She loves to research. And the next thing, 2 days later, I had 3 books in the mail. Stuff like a diabetes 101 for dummies kind of thing. But it's been great trying to learn that, read that and stuff. The ex-wife and I, we were, this is really actually, how do I say? So I'm remarried.
Okay.
And, my daughter, I'm with her every other day, twice during the week and then every other weekend. So it's practically every other day and every other weekend. And so I'm very involved. I coach everything she does. I'm just, I go to everything at school. I'm very involved. And, but it's always been a very structured thing with my ex-wife. And since this diagnosis, my ex-wife has decided we need to be open door, anytime, anywhere, things like that. And so it's been really awesome, but also kind of weird to see her and my wife getting along and talking, communicating. We just realized communication is the number one thing. So like yesterday, I was out of town in Chicago, but my ex-wife's mom took Ella over to my wife, who was swimming at my dad's house with her kids. So it was just weird.
So you guys are so prior to the diabetes diagnosis, everything was a little professional, little like, "Hi, how are you? Thank you for delivering the child," like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And excuse me 1 second, Brad. I'm really sorry. I never do this, but I'm gonna need to take this call for a split second. I'll be right back.
Go ahead.
Hello. It is. Good. Thanks. How are you? Okay. Okay. Here's what I want to do then. Can I cancel? I want to cancel today and keep my next one. And then please, could you make the request in the meantime for me? Okay. Okay. That's perfect. So cancel today. We'll see you Monday, and then we'll work it out from there. Thank you. Bye. Brad, I'm so sorry. My son's been getting physical therapy, and there's been an insurance issue.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start over with my line of thought.
We were very professional. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys were just. My parents are divorced. Like, I know what you mean. Like, nobody shoots each other, but everybody's eyes are a little averted, and people are passed around like packages a little bit, and then so really kudos to both of you. You're excellent to you, because I mean I think it's kind of cool that in such a short amount of time that you guys could see that if you tried to keep going the way you were going, this diabetes thing was never going to work out.
Well, it was, we got to communicate. I mean,
there's no way around it.
Oh yeah, we're having long conversations. My ex-wife and I were, conversations on the phone and on how to do this and that, and yeah, it's been really weird, but very thankful, and I'm kind of like finally, has been a thing, and so it's great for Ella also because I felt like she always felt like she was going to miss something. With my wife and her kids, things that we do whenever she's not around. So now she can come anytime and grow anytime and stuff. But that's been one thing I wanted to bring up here lately was before the diagnosis, but we think it has to do with the diagnosis, is a major mood change with my daughter, and to go see friends, play with friends, or come see me more or less, or things like just a lot of mood changes of what was normal before.
How so? what would you say? How was she prior, and how is she now?
Okay, and I don't want to say prior to diagnosis, but in the month, I would say in the month before diagnosis, things were really changing. So she's like doesn't want to stay the night with me. Doesn't want to go for summer to babysitters where all of her girlfriends are at to play for a week. During the day while we're at work. Her other friends that are down the road doesn't want to go over there and play. She used.
Are you seeing
like
sort
that.
of a reversal on that since the insulin's been introduced?
No,
Not yet. No. Hey,
oh.
Well, you never know. She could just, that it may or may not have anything to do with
right.
it. Yeah.
I know. I mean, you're dealing with a 9-year-old.
Well, you know what else? And you know what else you're seeing, Brad, is that all of a sudden, and this is not specific to you, but I would think to everyone listening, once you're diagnosed, you start becoming hyper-focused on a lot of things. Like you start thinking, like, how did this happen? There's no diabetes in our family. You start looking around for reasons. I think the honest truth of it is that, there's probably no reason you're going to figure out about why she, about why she has type 1, and you're going to start looking for, you'll stop looking for, reasons why things are happening.
I think it's just a phase, and she's, my daughter is also, excuse me, she thinks things out ahead way more than a 9-year-old should. She plans the day ahead very well. Things she wants to know exact time. She will sit there and contemplate how that can work out, whatever the plan was talked about. Instead of just running around with your head off like a kid, normally is or something.
Yeah.
Very focused and stuff. And so I think I know this has stressed her out, and I think she just likes the comfortableness of being around mom and staying home with mom for a while, longer than normal and stuff
sense.
Like that.
Well, what you just said is interesting because the being well planned out is a double-edged sword with diabetes. It'll help because you do need to find a little more regimentation places, but at the same time, you're going to learn as you go that you really do need to just kind of go with it a little bit too. Yeah. And there's that other side. Maybe that'll help even her personality out over the long run, if she can figure that out for herself.
And it helped. The other thing was she was diagnosed the Thursday, so a week before school was out. But we were in the hospital until Saturday, so she only had the next Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday of school, and then school was out for the summer. So that was helpful for us to have the summer to hammer down her numbers, regulate, figure it for us to figure
you can try
out.
To figure something out before she's got it. Yeah, I have to admit, my daughter wasn't in school. She was too young to be in school, but I talk to people all the time who are like diagnosed and then they've got to go right back to school. And it's another layer. I mean, your extra layer is obviously the divorce, but at least you don't have to, at least it's not figuring out a two household situation,
right.
Rejiggering your relationship with your ex-wife and school. At least you don't have the school. That's pretty cool. So yes. I know you, when you left the hospital, they gave you some pretty basic tools, right? So you're injecting
syringe and vial,
and so you have a syringe and a vial right now. Okay.
Yep.
And what's your findings at the moment? I mean, do you think it's possible she still honeymoon? She has a honeymoon phase?
Oh yeah. Because she's been, like I said, she was all over the place, and I found an app for me to be able to graph, and also I can probably use Excel or something, but I could put the numbers in. But that's the other hard part is I got to wait until I see her to see her book to see what the numbers were over at mom's, or mom sometimes will remember to text me so I can see how she's doing, in a graph, view for my own self. But just recently in the last few days, we're starting to get closer of an average of 150. But like last week, we were about averaging 200 with spikes up to 3 and lows down in the hundreds. But the nurses are still, they call every 2 days and check the numbers and then change it up and stuff like that. We started at 25 for the carbs, and now lunch is like 17, dinner's 20, things like that. So
you're figuring it out. Well, I would say this: the 200's not terrible. Spikes to 300 are easily fixed with a little more time and understanding, and blood sugars in the hundreds I wouldn't call low. So
no,
So I think you're not doing poorly. What really does strike me, and I'll sound like a salesman here for a second, but especially in the situation you're in, if she's considering wearing a glucose monitor, and you were to go with the Dexcom G5, the newest version of it, if you have iPhones, then your wife and you could be seeing her blood sugar at the same time, and you guys could be learning this together at the same time.
Exactly.
And that way, you're not passing back logbooks or trying to remember Tuesday and explain it to somebody, because that's difficult to do. And especially too, and I don't know your ex, but you mentioned already, again, maybe I could put an Excel spreadsheet together, and you mentioned that your daughter's kind of particular about planning things, which maybe sounds like it might be coming from you if you're mentioning a spreadsheet, right? Right. And so maybe if your ex is like laid back, or not exactly as kind of like focused on stuff like this as you are, which I don't find to be a bad thing. We have the same situation here. My wife is much more type A, and I'm more like, I'll just feel my way through it. But we both understand it. But the fairness to us is we can both see it happening at the same time. But with that glucose monitor, with that sharing ability, you guys could kind of live it together and figure it out together. Yeah.
No. My wife is type A and I'm type B. I'm more the laid back or whatever. But yes, I am. But at the same time, I'm organized. I like to try to be as organized as I can.
I see.
And then something as important as this, and then when I'm not around 24/7, and I feel I'm constantly worried because she's over there with her mom. And so, yes, that's why I would love for us to try to be able to get a Dexcom ASAP, just so I feel more involved instead of being caught up.
And vice versa too. Like you just said something that I think people could misconstrue. Like, I don't think you mean that you're nervous because she's with her mom. You mean you're just nervous because she's not with you. It's that feeling. Yeah, it's that feeling of. And listen, I'm not divorced, but I've been married for 20 years coming up this summer. I could easily see how I could have been divorced a number of times over the last month, and anybody else too. And my parents were divorced, and I've often wondered, if you're an involved parent like you are, and something happens in your marriage, and now you're suddenly not with your children every day, I can't personally imagine that. That sounds crushing to me. And I don't imagine that it isn't to you. And then when you add this situation, I mean, I just don't. I am having a really difficult time wrapping my head around how you or your ex handle it when Elle's not with you. It must be terribly just stressful. I would.
Well, no, in the beginning, and going back to like communication, like last night, the ex-wife did text me, and she just put 2:43, so that was her bedtime. And then this morning she texted me and just put 1:68. So I know that the morning time was 1:68. So she, she's doing really good on communicating, keeping me involved as much as possible. But I don't know how my daughter feels at 2:48. Okay, you told me it's 2:48, but what does she feel like, or is it affecting her? We're very active people. I'm a very active person. I can't sit for very long. I play sports. My daughter's playing baseball and loves to swim. She has a pool at her mom's house and at my dad's house, and so we swim a lot. And we'd had a couple scares, which to you may not sound like, but to us, because it was new. But she had we were swimming a couple times last week, and had a 73 and a 68. And freaked me out a little bit, and I ran inside and just got some orange juice and some crackers, and then it happened over at her mom's too, and she called me what to do and told her, don't freak out, just give her some slow carbs, and then check her again in 15 and stuff. But
don't freak out. It's really good advice, Brad. It really is. And to your point about the glucose monitor too, in that same situation, you might be alerted of that when she's at 100, and then instead of having to treat it so heavily and maybe end up getting high afterwards, you can just sort of like Arden swam for a very long time 2 weekends ago. And even though the Dexcom doesn't work when it's underwater, but she still comes out of the pool once in a while to grab the signal back. And I was able to just be like, hey, take a handful of grapes before you go back in the pool.
I was wondering how that works. So it does, you can swim with it on. Okay.
Yeah, you can. So it just doesn't transmit.
Gotcha.
First of all, it's Bluetooth. So it's probably limited to about 20 feet to begin with. But what would happen is she'd go in the pool, and then she'd get out and run past a couple times. It would grab the signal again, and then I could look at it, and then just say, hey, I would definitely just have a handful of grapes. If you're gonna have pizza, now's the time, like that kind of stuff. And she was in that pool for 4 or 5 hours, and we did have some like 70s and I think 160, but they never got lower. She was never dizzy, and we got them right back again.
Yeah,
There's
she
so
never
much
felt
you're
weird.
going to learn. No, she
Right.
didn't feel dizzy at
No.
60, but she was probably only there for a brief moment. You know, there's an episode, if you've been listening through, if there's an episode called Terry Lives on a Boat, and Terry's a gentleman who's been living with type 1 diabetes for a very long time, and he made a statement to me that he saw some data that says that people who don't have diabetes, who aren't using man-made insulin, will experience an hour or so a day at times with a blood sugar in the 60s. And that's not something you would even know. You know, so 60, not great, but 60 and falling, okay, that's scary and needs to be addressed. But if your blood sugar is 70 and it stays there for 20 minutes and comes back up again, that's not the worst thing in the world. But we're so accustomed to looking at the data now, and especially if you have a CGM, you can see when someone's blood sugar was 70 for 30 minutes before it just sort of kind of like cruise back up again on its own.
Yeah.
And it's easy to feel scared about that, but no one ever thinks like, I wonder, maybe my blood sugar was 70 today too, and I don't have diabetes. I'm not using man-made insulin. So I just think you're in the very beginning stages of an information collection period for you, which is how does this insulin affect her? How does the exercise hit her? How does different foods affect her? You know, and once you have these, people are probably tired of me saying it, but once you have these experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, over and over and over again, eventually that's what you draw from. And that's how you stop from having the lows and the highs and the spikes, because you'll just sort of know what to do at some point.
Well, and you mentioned in one of your cat podcasts how, I mean, you guys play a game where you can guess where her number is, and you're usually within 15 of it, you know, and you know what foods were due to her and not, and stuff like, and I can't wait to know that. But that's the hard part again is, you know, if she's at her mom's, I don't know what she ate when she had a 248. I don't know what she had for dinner. I don't know what she, you know, or how much exercise she had that day or not. And stuff like that.
No, so, and listen, Brad, I'm going to share something personal that'll probably get me in trouble with my wife if she ever listens to this. So Kelly, if you're listening, stop listening right now. It's not important. But I have for a very long time, in every way I can imagine, asked my wife not to let my daughter have this one specific food. It's hard on her. It pushes her blood sugar into the 200s. It leaves it there I can't get it down, you know, and I think that my wife thought she had figured out how to like not let the blood sugar get higher. And then just the other night, my daughter had this food with her, and then her blood sugar jumped up to 200. I couldn't get it down. All night it was 200. I ended up having to give her like a crushing amount of insulin at some point to get it down. But I wasn't there when she ate it. I didn't know exactly how much she had. I couldn't recall the steps that were taken because I wasn't there. It's just like what you're talking about. So you're not just blind because diabetes is difficult, but then you're blind because you weren't privileged to the steps that happen. Like it's easy to say she had this many carbs or it was this many of this, but my inference of what that food means, and my wife's is different because I'm with her more frequently. I'm with Arden more frequently. I may have looked at that food and said, this is this many carbs for sure, and completely agree with my wife, but I may have said, but that needs more insulin. And that might not be an experience my wife has because she's not as involved in this because she's working and I'm here. So it's no one's fault. But the reason I'm sharing it with you, and I'm not upset with my wife or anything like that, but the reason I'm sharing it with you is because you could have a very visceral reaction to that, and it is easy to say something to your spouse that you don't mean, and that comes from a place of fear. And so I would caution you against, if you have something to say about stuff like that, I mean, I really do think the 24-hour rule would be a good idea. You know what I mean? Like so that when you actually do say it, it's not in the moment, it's not in the heat of any kind of a moment. You're not saying something while a blood sugar's high, and later you can say it a different way. You can say, hey, yesterday this happened, and I'm trying to figure out how to not, let it happen again. And I was wondering when the insulin went in and that kind of thing. And because trust me, there's no good that comes from having that conversation in the moment. And there's this drive that you're going to know better than I do, but that feeling of wanting to like protect your kid and her health, you really do. You have to be a special person to still kind of speak in the King's English in that situation and not just say something stupid that 10 minutes later you're like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said it like that.
Yep. No, yeah. I've been really, the 24-hour rule is a great advice I give, young men all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It really just is like sometimes you just need to think it through a few times before you say something. And, and you don't need to hurt somebody's feelings, especially when both people have the same goal in mind. So. Yeah.
I'm a tech guy. I love tech stuff. My ex-wife is not. And so that's why I want to maybe today talk with the NP if she knows if this is the place to ask her, but about the Dexcom or even the pen, when we can get a pen. I mean, we got summer parties going on, or birthday parties, or we usually, for the past years when summer came, I would drop her off with my mom while I'm at work, or she would, leave her, her mom would come over, when she's with her, grandparents, stuff like that, go to birthday parties. Well, grandparents are still trying to catch up on how this all works with this basic, syringe and everything, basic way we're doing. So yeah, I mean, if I could get a pen prescription so that she can go to a party, because Ella's checking her blood now. So for about the past week now, she's been proactive herself and trying to check herself. She checks her step siblings every once in a while.
Everybody's getting their blood sugar checked.
Yeah, so we're all trying to be involved with her so she doesn't feel like she's an outcast, and stuff.
Sure.
And but then then I found out those little test strips are prescription. You can't just go get more. So you only get so many, in your prescription. So, the ex-wife was telling us, chill out.
And depending too on they could be expensive depending on your insurance coverage too. So let me ask you a question. So you already, like you said, you've been poking around, about CGM. Yeah. Does she have an opinion about CGM, insulin pumps, that kind of stuff? This would be a great place to talk about our sponsor, OmniPod. Let's put aside that I know you want a tubeless insulin pump, because there's no way you want tubing. Let's talk about the future for a second. Let's get the time machine, boop, 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 and go to the future. OmniPod has just released a timeline for some of the things they're doing in the near future. One of them is they got a whole new kind of fancy PDM, the personal diabetes manager, the wireless thing that controls the pod with, like when you want to give yourself insulin. You just yank this little thing out, you push a couple buttons, and you're getting insulin. No tubes. No wires, all magic through the air. It's probably not magic. It's probably going to be Bluetooth. Also, OmniPod wants you to know that they have begun the submission process with the FDA, and the clinical trial process and all that other stuff is in the motion. They got themselves an artificial pancreas coming. They're calling it Horizon. And, it's slated to launch in 2019, which may seem like it's far away, but it's not. And it brings up a good point. One of the greatest things about the Omnipod is when they make an improvement to the Omnipod, you just get it. It's not like with another insulin pump where you buy Model X, and then if you want Model XY, you have to buy another one. With Omnipod, a couple years ago, they shrunk down the pods, made them smaller. When that happened, I just started getting smaller pods in the mail. I didn't have to say, hey, I want the better stuff. I want the newer stuff. I want the good stuff. They just started sending them. They're not messing around. They don't have 17,000 different insulin pumps. They've got the best version of their insulin pump. Did that sink in? Do you hear what I'm saying? Enjoy that thought for a second. And then go to myomnipod.com/demo. Get started today. It's a free, no obligation demo pod. It's free and it's got no obligation. Just do it now. myomnipod.com/demo. I don't know why you're not typing already.
Well, then I found a YouTube channel of a family and a daughter that was roughly the same age as yours. It sounds like 9, 10, 11, and out in Denver. But they've been video and everything, and so I was able to show her. I was watched it, had my daughter watch it to show her what it looked like and how. I mean, they even videoed how when that girl first put it on her arm. So she would love to not get pricked 4 times a day in her fingers. She would love to not have anybody see her getting, friends and stuff like that. We've had to check her at a ball game and stuff, and But at the same time, she's only 3 weeks in, and so she feels weird about everything. That she's a weird person to everybody and stuff like that. So I just want, like you said before in one of your podcasts, I want her to be to feel as normal as possible and feel like it's not controlling her life, that she controls it. And if we can see 24/7 through the monitor, it would make us feel more relaxed and also, like you said, get better sleep.
Yeah, I genuinely believe that. And not only that, but if you ever think about, and not that injections aren't fantastic, but, at the same time, if you were using a pump, then you could really start making when you start seeing your patterns, you can start making more high level decisions,
Right.
and simple things. Like I would tell you very easily that if somebody said to me, what would you tell a newly diagnosed family? I think the first thing I would say to you is that I think it gets, I don't know that diabetes is, I think people say it gets easier. I don't think it gets easier. I just think you get really good at it at some point and it makes it feel easier, which is
That makes sense.
splitting hairs, but still. And I would say that happens sooner than you imagine. And, it's hard to imagine in the moment that you're going to feel confident at some point, but you got to kind of trust somebody who's been there already. It's coming. I would also say that being able to see, real-time blood sugars is a major thing. It's a leap forward. It would then allow you to start making decisions like you could see, hey, we ate at this time and then we saw this 300 spike. And then you could start understanding better how the insulin works and, giving insulin prior to food. And if you had a pump, you could give insulin prior to food, see a spike and go, okay, I didn't give enough. And then adjust basal rates up or give more insulin. And, there's a lot of things, fine tuning things that you can do that aren't just like count the carbs, stick the insulin and wait 3 hours, test again. If you're high, give yourself more. And if you're, that's just very rudimentary, I guess. And you'll figure that out pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I feel like I don't want to say a lot like you, but I want to have that challenge. I want to figure it out, the little tweaks here and there and stuff. I feel like I could do that very easily if I could see it in real time or yeah.
It's a world of difference. I mean, it honestly is. I can remember back to not having any of this technology, and it was all just a crapshoot. And the information I had from my doctor was, I've been saying it like this recently, but it was stay alive information, not live healthy information. And I'm not. I wasn't just looking for my daughter to not die. I'd like her to live well.
Sure.
And if that's possible, then why not try? And then what you find out is that after you're involved in it for a little bit, what sounds like a ton of effort isn't. And I hear back from people a lot. Just recently I posted something on one of my social media channels, and the person came back, a mother, and she's like, "This just looks like a lot of work." And I said, "It's not. It was to learn it. It was to learn it, and it was to put it into practice. But now that I know how to do it, to be perfectly honest, I probably sound like, I'm thinking about my daughter's diabetes constantly, but I'm never thinking about it. Like everything's in place, and I don't know how to, that must sound frustrating for people who are in your situation, or people who've been at it for a really long time and it's not coming together for them. But, between this technology and understanding how to time insulin, I don't have a tough time with it for the most part,
Yeah.
And I think that's possible for everybody.
I hope so. Yeah. I was sitting there flipping through a text where 2 days ago she had a baseball game, and when she went home, it was bedtime was 281. We're still doing the 2 a.m. checks. So 2 a.m. was 100, and then in the morning around 8 probably or 7, it was 93. So we went from 281 to 93 within 10 hours.
Without insulin, without a fast acting, or with it?
No, we have Levemir is the nighttime one. So at the 281 time, she gave her Levemir, and then checked her at 1, no insulin, just checked her, and it was 100, and then checked her in the morning, and it was 93 before her Humalog that we're using Humalog.
So if you were just do your slow acting insulin, the Levemir, at night.
Yes.
And so from the activity, you think she went all the way from 281 to 93 overnight. So I'll make a suggestion you can bring up with your MP today. Ask the MP if they don't think that a good idea might be to split the Levemir into 2 different shots. So instead of once every 24 hours, however much you're using, I don't know, do you
9 units?
Okay, so instead of 9 units every 24 hours, let's do 4.5 units every 12 hours to give us a smoother coverage.
Right.
Because she shouldn't be dropping from 281 to 93 without a fast-acting insulin. Maybe it was the activity that brought her down, but at the same time, maybe you could have avoided the 281 with a smoother coverage of slow-acting insulin. So
that's why I was more amazed, because that 281 came after a baseball game.
Yeah, well,
so that's what amazed me. How?
So here I can tell you this, and it's funny. I'm going to get off the track for a second. My daughter plays softball, but I call it baseball because my son plays baseball. Is your daughter playing baseball or is she playing softball?
No, she's complete tomboy.
Is she playing baseball?
Yeah, she wants to play with the boys. She's one of three girls in the whole league.
My daughter joked the other day. She's like, when I come back from my last year of Little League, I'm going to play baseball instead of softball.
Yeah.
But okay, so great. So it's confounding to you. How does she get high while she's active, right?
Or after being active, yeah.
Right,
I mean, the game was over by 8:30, so that I know that shot or that check was by 9. So yeah.
So here's the question, right? If we'll take this as a little microcosmos idea, like prior to the game, did you know what her blood sugar was?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, so there's so much going into it. So maybe she was high from dinner that carried into the game. Maybe I don't know how aware you are that adrenaline can really spike your blood sugar.
Sure.
So my daughter gets insulin while she's playing softball.
Well,
and that would be difficult to imagine without a glucose monitor, I guess. But as soon as the game becomes contested in any way, or it's an important game to begin with, Arden gets a spike of adrenaline, and I have to give her insulin for the adrenaline. The problem with the adrenaline is that if the adrenaline goes away before the insulin's finished, you could get low afterwards. And so it's quite a balancing act to keep.
Yeah, we have to pull her out after an hour. The games are about an hour and 45. We pull her out in an hour and give her a 15 carb snack and let her chill for a minute. And then she goes back out, at the next inning or so.
And did you do that because she was low?
No, because we were told by the nurse. We were to give her a 15 carb snack 15 minutes before any heavy activity, swimming, baseball, or something, heavy activity. So a 15 carb 15 minutes before, and an hour into the activity, pull out and do another 15 carb snack, sit for a minute, and then go back to doing whatever. So that's what we've been doing with swimming and this baseball, which is the only two things going on that are heavy activity.
Okay, so everybody listening who listens to the podcast right now, imagine what I'm going to say. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making changes to your health plan. Now, Brad, you gave her 15 carbs and she ended up at 300 afterwards. Do you think she needed the 15 carbs?
I wasn't.
Just think about it. Forget not being there.
To be honest, no, I don't. Because these baseball games at 9 years old are very slow, very hard to watch. The kids are pitching and they don't know how to pitch, and so it's mostly a bunch of walks. She's
basically standing outside in a baseball uniform, and so I get. So I want you to wrap your head around this a little bit and ask your NP when you talk to her. Your NP gave you very basic, generalized advice that will most certainly keep your daughter from having a seizure while she's playing baseball.
Right.
She did not give you any advice specific to you and your daughter and the actual situation.
Right.
And so you have to start, and it's early on. I'm not breaking your stones here, but you have to start having an experience like that and saying to yourself, well, wow, we did what they told us to do, but then our blood sugar was 300. Yeah. So the food sounds like it wasn't necessary. I would say to you, pull her out of the game, test her blood sugar. If her blood sugar is 150, she certainly doesn't need a snack. And if my daughter's blood sugar was 150 while she was playing softball and she ate something, I'd give her insulin for it. And so you, trust me, 6 months from now, Brad, you're going to send me an email and be like, "Oh my God, we've moved forward so amazingly from those thoughts we had in the first couple of weeks." I'm not telling you to stop that today. I'm not telling you need to fast forward to where I am. I'm telling you, think about it. Think about what's happening and say to yourself, is this really the right thing to be doing? And then once you get your answers to those questions, you'll be able to make decisions autonomously that lead you to better situations. Because basically what it sounds like to me is that I would take the baseball out of the equation. Your daughter had an uncovered snack that made her blood sugar really high. And then she drops 200 points overnight. that's a different issue because she's not really that active in the baseball game. So I would guess that the drop's not from activity. I would guess that the drop could be from maybe the levomire's not working as smoothly for you as it could be. So that slow-acting insulin gets injected and it crystallizes under the skin, and then it sort of melts away slowly.
Oh, okay.
And there are people who would tell you that sometimes it works faster than it should, or slower than it should, or that you run out of it before the end of the 24 hours. So maybe you injected it the night before, she had a snack during softball, maybe it was not as potent at the end of the 24-hour period. That might have also helped her get high. And then when you injected it, it may have worked a little too quickly and drug her down, which is why I'm saying let's split it and put it 12 hours apart.
I see that. Yeah, I agree with.
Does that make? And so talk to the MP. And when you talk to the MP like that, if she looks back at you like, "Oh, these people have been paying attention," that's when you hit her up for the CGM because you won't look lost and inept in that moment and scared.
Right.
You'll look like you're paying attention. You're trying to figure things out, and I want more information so that we can do better. Because most of the times when they tell you, oh, you can't have an insulin pump right away, you can't have this right away, it's mainly because they're trying to protect you from yourself. And I don't completely agree with that concept. I understand it. But the sooner you look like you know what you're doing, the better chance you have to get these devices when you ask for them.
And that's what I told my ex-wife. But at the same time, we're still scared, and so we're just all we know to do is to go by what they're telling us. But Absolutely. At the same time, I am looking at these numbers like, well, why did we give her that snack? We didn't need to. But at the same time, we didn't check her before the snack, so maybe we should have checked her. But then we're like, man, I hate pricking her finger 8 times a day. You
are in the middle of so many different vexing situations. Because I would say to you, I heard you say she doesn't want to get her finger checked 4 times a day. I would tell you at this point, without a glucose monitor, I'd be checking her more like 8 or 9 times a day.
Right.
Because you need to, or get a glucose monitor, but you need to know when we do this is what happens next. And if you're not checking frequently enough, there's no way to know what's happening next.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where I feel like, yes.
Well, you're 100% right. And so that's why I'm telling you, that's why my better advice to you is that when you have a feeling like that, that's what I feel like, you need to follow that feeling a little more. Like in the end, Brad, I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast, but I talk to, like, this conversation you and I are having is probably not much different than we would have had on the phone if we would have talked privately. But what my finding is, and I've talked to a lot of parents over the phone over the years, is that most of them have 2 things in common. They don't trust their gut enough, and they don't have confidence, and that's kind of one issue. And the other thing is that they take what they're being told blindly, and when they see that what they're being told isn't accurate, they kind of don't have the nerve to then trust their gut and follow that idea till it's.
That's exactly right. That's exactly how we've been feeling.
You get very stuck with the lady at the hospital told me this, and we are doing this, even though the outcome is completely not what we want. It's I don't know what the analogy is, but if I gave you advice about, it's okay, Brad, shut your eyes and walk through the house, and you walked into a wall, and I said, no, keep your eyes shut and keep going. Like, you'd be like, yo, man, no. Right. So you and I said, no, Brad, listen, I'm an expert on walking through the house with your eyes closed. You have to listen to me. Okay, you shut your eyes, bang, you're into a wall again. At what point are you going to open your eyes and go, A, I refuse to walk into a wall again, and B, I got to look for better advice in this situation. Mm-hmm. Maybe I ought to have my hands out while I'm walking. Mm-hmm. But this is a repetitive thing over the podcast, but we were raised this way. Mm-hmm. Blindly listen to police and doctors and teachers. There's certain people you don't question, and even as adults, it's hard to break away from it sometimes.
Right. She, the ex-wife, when I told her about finding your website and your podcast and other people's and other things I've been looking at, she didn't she's like, well, I know, she tells me, I know you love to research and look out and try to find other ways and all that stuff, but I just want to know what the doctors are going to tell me. I want to do what they tell us. They're the professionals. I want to wait and hear from them. This was all in the first week.
It's very understandable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But, at the same time, why not listen to people who are experiencing it? How do we know that nurse hasn't? I mean, she's experienced other people's, through other people. She doesn't have diabetes, maybe, things like you guys do. And so that's why I thought it was.
Yeah, it's the speed limit analogy, right? 35 miles an hour through a curve. Everybody has to drive 35 miles an hour through a curve because somebody's driving through there with a 25-year-old Datsun. But if you came up to that curve in a Porsche, you could probably go through at 65 miles an hour.
Right.
But the government can't put up a sign that says, if you're driving a Porsche, it's 65, it's this, because nobody knows who you are in the moment. And the doctor is in the same situation. Brad, they don't know if you are an incredibly bright, involved person who can grasp this. They don't know if you're a math challenged person who doesn't understand anything it's saying, that's scared out of their mind. And so they give you very 35 mile an hour advice. You know what I mean? And so that's why I'm telling you is that one of the things
I got to show them.
You have to show them who you are so they know how much they can give you. And after you've done that, if they don't have that information, that's where you and your ex have to get together on the idea that diabetes is, and this is my finding, and I'm sure it's many, many other people's findings. It is a disease that after you live with it for a very short amount of time, you probably know more about it than your doctor does. And that's not something that you can say in a lot of situations, right? Like my son broke his arm this year. I'm never going to know more about healing a broken arm than the ortho I went to see. But I bet you if I lived with a broken arm for 10 years, I'd know. And so at some point, diabetes is so specific and personal, person to person, about how insulin affects you and how food affects you and exercise and all that stuff, that it's not even fair to expect the doctor to know all that about you. So they're always going to be giving you generalized information. Okay. And it's your job to take what works and make it specific to you and go back to them and tell them what's not working. And if their advice continually puts you walking into a wall, well, at some point, if you've got a glucose monitor and you understand how insulin works, sometimes you just got to try for yourself.
Right. Yeah. And I understand in the beginning, again, the ex-wife didn't understand everything. When we were there for those 3 days in that hospital, she was asking questions that was telling me, okay, she still doesn't get the hang of this. But I took grasp of it really fast to understand. But it's the understanding that, hey, this food's going to affect her differently than that kind of food. A fruit and a starch is different, or a sugar, or not a sugar, but just the different types of foods that have carbs will affect her slowly or faster. And their effects last differently.
You get 2 tablespoons of table sugar might have however many carbs it has in it, and it might spike your blood sugar up, but you'd be surprised how quickly, like her Levemir could probably handle that and bring it back again. You could have an equal amount of carbs of a bagel, and then you need to understand that bagel goes into your stomach and it sits in there and digests very, very slowly, giving off carbohydrates and raising your blood sugar, sometimes for hours afterwards.
Exactly, and that's one of her favorite things to eat. Is bread.
Good for you. Bread. And by that was sarcasm. And so, so look, if it makes you feel better, and I hope it does. Now, my daughter took her lunch to school today. There is a half of a bagel with Nutella on it. That seems to be the thing this year. She has a grab bag of chips, 3 Oreo cookies, a big handful of grapes, I don't know how many, some cherries, I don't know how many, and a juice box that has 8 carbs in it. And when an hour and a half after you and I are done talking, we're going to pre-bolus her meal 15 minutes before she eats it. And I am going to just randomly choose an amount of insulin that I think is correct. And I know it's somewhere. I know that meal is going to take probably, and this is specific to Arden, obviously, but probably 8.5 to 9 units of insulin, and it's going to require me to probably boost her basal rate, which is something you can't do because you're not pumping, by about 60% for about 2 hours. And if I do that, if I pre-bolus 15 minutes before and I do all the things I just told you, my expectation is that her blood sugar won't go over about 125.
Wow.
And that is based on so much trial and error, Brad.
Exactly.
And it's based on having the technology at my disposal, and it's based on experience. And
Exactly.
To expect that to happen for you today is crazy with an injection, with a syringe and a thing. But if you let that be the story you tell the MP, because the way I got the CGM was, I think I've told this here before, but my nurse practitioner once told me a story a long time ago, back when Dexcom was at maybe the 7+ version, about this kid that she had who got a glucose monitor because he just wanted to eat M&Ms without his blood sugar spiking. And he said after a month of trial and error, the kid figured out exactly how much insulin at exactly what time, and then how long to wait until he ate the M&Ms, and then never a spike. Just ate the M&Ms like it wasn't like you and I would.
Wow.
Probably better. And when I heard that was possible, I thought, well, then it's possible for everything. And give me that technology so I can see that and start making those decisions. And it's, for the most part, worked out really great. I will tell you, and I'm pretty proud at this point, we're up to almost 3 years between 5'9" and 6'2" for her A1C. And Arden eats pretty much whatever she wants.
That's what do we have to wait another 3 months to do another A1C?
Yeah, dude, don't even, don't worry about it. Like, they'll do it quarterly for you.
Okay.
Don't try hard and to not let it feel like a report card on your parenting. Use it more as a guideline. Like, we're doing better. Things are going the way I'm hoping, or they're not, or whatever. Right. You might want to try. It's tough because it's so new in the beginning, but there's probably a couple of foods you could avoid to make this easier on you. And so some people might say to you, it's unfair. She was just diagnosed. She loves bagels and bread, but if you take bagels and bread out of the mix for a little while, it might be easier for you to figure out how the insulin works, because because bagels and bread, as an example, that's more high level insulin using. Mm-hmm. If you use stuff that's a little more balanced and a little less, carb rich, that's stuff that stays in your system for a long time and affects your blood sugar, you can get an easier idea of how to do this, and then you can say to yourself, okay, now let me reintroduce the bagel and take what I've learned and apply it to this, and it really is possible. It's not,
this is making Ella be more honest with herself and her food, and meaning that, are you going to be able to eat all that or not? Just because you say you're hungry, are your eyes hungry or is your stomach hungry, kind of thing? You need to, if you say you're going to eat those two fish fillets, you have to eat them all. More of the carb stuff, but this has made her become more, honest with herself, how much she can and can't eat. She's gotten a lot better at that. In the beginning, she wouldn't eat it all. And we would sit there and say, okay, you need to eat something else, and you need, to add up for the insulin we gave you.
Yeah.
But that's, so then, like, when she comes over, and like I said, it's every other day. So I have every other dinner and stuff, and I'll look at her mom's numbers on that log book, and she's eating 120 carbs and getting 6-7 units. But then my dinners are 40 to 60 carbs, if anything, and I'm doing seafoods, or I'll take the bread off of the hamburger and just hey honey, you're going to use a fork, no bread or something, but my carbs are lower. But her mom's excuse is she wants her to get some meat back on her bones. We lost 8 pounds in a couple weeks. She's 5 foot tall already at 9 years old. I'm very tall. Her mom's very tall. But she's just bone. So we're trying to get some meat back on her. But at the same time, I don't want to shove her down with a bunch of bread and a bunch of insulin. I'm just trying to get her to. She was a very picky eater before we were diagnosed, and so now she still is. And we're trying to get her to widen her palate. To try other stuff, but she loves meats and she loves seafoods, and so I've just been sticking with things like that.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying makes me think of two different things. So first thing it makes me think is that when your blood sugar is in a good range, and you're using the insulin well, she will just gain weight. If the blood sugars are high a lot, she could be experiencing ketoacidosis, and then that could be taking weight off of her. So Definitely keeping her blood sugars, in range will help her put on weight. The other thing is, I completely get what you're saying about like taking the bun off of a burger and stuff like that. And listen, however many carbs in a meal is not up to me to say. I would tell you my kids' meals are more like 50 or 60 carbs. I don't think there's many meals where there's 120 carbs happening at my house. But at the same time, I would caution you against, causing any kind of like a food issue. Like you don't want her to be scared to eat, and you don't want her to feel like she has to eat. And at the same time, I understand what you're saying. You give her that insulin, and then you're scared to death if they don't cover the insulin for carbs. But keep this in mind, too. Is she getting high after dinner? Is her blood sugar higher? Because if it is, then you're probably not using enough insulin anyway. So if she doesn't eat everything, it probably isn't going to hurt you as far as the blood sugar goes.
The bedtime number, and again, we're not checking enough. We check at 5 o'clock for dinner, and then we'll check at bedtime somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock. So there's 3 or 4 hours that could go by that we don't know. So I need to check more. But yeah, the bedtime is usually a high number.
Yeah, because
200s,
right.
Easily.
And listen, trust me, 200, you're not doing bad. Don't get me wrong. But it's possible that, think about it, that 200 number, had she not eaten the last 3 bites of her dinner, might have been more like 150. You never know. You know what I mean? So,
right.
So what I'm saying is don't feel burdened that she's got to eat every last bite, because then you might make her feel weird about food, when what you really could be doing is say to her, all right, listen, if you're done eating, it's all good. You know what we're going to do instead? We're going to just test in 90 minutes and make sure, or however long I think is right, and make sure you don't get low afterwards. And if you do, maybe then you can have a little snack or like something like that. That sort of normalizes it. Like, use all the tools at your disposal to make things as normal as possible. Like, don't get me wrong. If Arden's blood sugar's tanking and I think she's in a real bad situation, and I'm like, here, eat this banana, and she has 2 bites of it, I will say, don't eat the whole banana right now. Hurry up. But at the same time, if her blood sugar was 75 and she didn't want to eat anything, and I could see on her glucose monitor that she was steady, I have different tools at my disposal. I could shut off her basal insulin for a half an hour, maybe bring her up a little bit, whereas you have Levemir going and you can't. But you also might be able to say, look, just have a couple of these fruit snacks, or a handful of grapes or something. Let's see if we can get that 75 to be more like 90. But I don't want to force you to eat at the same time. So if you're not hungry, maybe a few sips of milk might be the way to go on this. So, don't think of it as like full. It's tough because the doctor puts that 15 grams in your head, right? Treat with 15 grams. But if you had an 85 blood sugar, you wouldn't want to treat that with 15 grams, because it's going to make you 200.
Yeah.
For me, an 85 blood sugar would be, take 2 sips of this, or have 4 of those things, or, hey, you know how you never eat cereal? Well, go take a small handful of cereal and we'll bump it a little bit. It'll make more sense to you when you can see the data better. I'm interested. I hope you send me an email later today and tell me how much of that technology you were able to wrangle out of. So let me give you this last little bit of advice, I guess, at the end here, because we're up on an hour.
Yep.
If you go in there today and you have the insurance for it and you want a CGM, do not let the MP tell you no. Don't let her say, well, we would like you to have diabetes longer. Just say, I hear what you're saying, but we understand how it works and we want it. And so please write me the prescription and let's get the process going.
Yes, that's my plan.
Yeah. It's the idea that you need to have diabetes longer. I don't subscribe to it all. I wish they would have given your daughter a Dexcom I wish in the hospital they would have said, hey, bad news, got to wear this thing now, click, and been like, here's how it works. Because then all this fear and this confusion that you're talking about wouldn't exist in its current form. It would exist in a different form, Brad, because then you could see the blood sugar. Yeah. But at least then you could start making decisions to stop that wavy line and get it together. Right now, you're scared with no way out. With the information, you're scared with a way to fix it.
They want us to wait a year for pump therapy, and but that's more or less based on our knowledge. So my goal is by December, when my daughter's 10th birthday comes, is to be able to get her on pump therapy at least by then, and prove to the endo in October how knowledgeable we are by then. And
so, Brad, I would tell you this. I would say that seems arbitrary. You know what I mean? 1 year.
Yeah.
It was told to me in the past. I completely get it. And at the same time,
that scares me.
I don't see why you would need to wait 1 year to get it.
Me neither.
If you wanted an insulin pump and your daughter wants an insulin pump and you think this is the best way for you to handle things, there's no reason, there's no medical reason you can't have one sooner.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't want to cause you a problem, but I would say to you, look, if that's the things you want, you would say to the doctor, well, I hear what you're saying, but we want an insulin pump now. And if you're not willing to do that, I'm going to go find an endocrinologist that's willing to do it. Because you're not special. No. There are other endocrinologists. And I'm going to be looking for one who's a little more forward-thinking about the technology.
Yeah.
Well,
I know we're up on our time. I just wanted to, so I'd like to finish by saying thank you very much for how proactive you've been for the diabetes community, because it's been very helpful. I've learned a lot just listening to other parents and links that you've given on your website. It's been a great help, and I just wanted to say thank you very much.
I appreciate that. You're very kind, and it's absolutely my pleasure. Brad, I remember feeling like you felt, and
scared.
My hope is that you don't feel like that as long as I did. That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, dude, great luck, and I don't know if your ex-wife will ever listen to this, but if she's listening, I think you guys are doing a really cool thing about, how you're talking and everything. And I have to let her know that it did feel weird not to say her name, to call her the ex, but at the same time, I understand that she doesn't want her name in this, and you're not in that situation where you can just blurt it out. It almost got fun at some point. You were like, the ex, my ex-wife. I was like, this is fun. But nevertheless, if it was a comfort, I would have loved her or used her name. But I think you guys, you might have done one of the most adult things in your life, like putting aside how you were handling things for your daughter. And I think that should be, for people who are listening, I mean, I hope you take that in your own life if you're divorced, because I see you all complaining online, my ex. These people they put their egos aside and they did what was right for Ella, and that's really cool. So
exactly.
All right, Brad, man, have a great day. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thanks to OmniPod for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. I genuinely do not know where we would be without OmniPod. If you'd like to find out what it's like to live untethered and have a really cool insulin pump, go to my&nbsp.com/demo or click on any of the links in the show notes or at juiceboxpodcast.com. Try a free, no obligation demo. Big thanks to Brad for coming on and being so honest. It cannot be easy to go on a podcast and talk about, your ex-wife and co-parenting a child who's just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, but I think he did a really great service today by sharing their story. If you're a new listener to the podcast, don't forget to go back and try old episodes, because they're only old to you because you've never heard them before. It's not like they're outdated or they don't work anymore or the information in them stopped being good. That's silly. They're just, they happened before you started listening. Go back, try one. Start with Bold with Insulin. Everyone loves Bold with Insulin. Do that one. And then try more. And then tell a friend. And then... I'm done. Goodbye.